Have you ever wondered why thousands of people are driving across state lines, some traveling over 500 miles just to buy tobacco from a small Amish community? What makes this tobacco so special that buyers from 20 different states are willing to make this journey? Is it the purity, the price, or something else entirely? In today's video, we're going deep into the world of Amish tobacco farming to uncover the secrets behind this phenomenon. From traditional farming methods to the incredible journey these buyers make, we'll reveal everything. Stay tuned, because what you're about to discover will surprise you. Welcome to Amish Forge. Today, we're exploring one of the most fascinating stories in American agriculture: the rising demand for Amish-grown tobacco. While most tobacco comes from massive corporate farms filled with chemicals and modern machinery, there's a quiet revolution happening in Amish communities across the United States. These farmers are using centuries-old techniques, refusing to use pesticides or chemical fertilizers, and creating a product so pure and high quality that buyers are traveling from 20 different states just to get their hands on it. But how did this tradition start? What makes their tobacco so different? And why are people willing to travel such long distances? In the next 30 minutes, we'll answer all these questions and take you inside the world of Amish tobacco farming. Let's dive in. Amish farming history. The story of Amish tobacco farming begins centuries ago, rooted in traditions that came across the ocean with European immigrants. The Amish community, known for their separation from modern society and devotion to simple living, brought with them agricultural knowledge that had been passed down through generations. When they settled in America, primarily in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana during the 1700s and 1800s, they brought seeds, techniques, and a philosophy of farming that rejected shortcuts and embraced patience. Tobacco wasn't always their primary crop. Initially, the Amish focused on subsistence farming, growing food for their families and communities. However, as they needed cash crops to sustain their growing populations and maintain their land, tobacco emerged as a viable option. Unlike other farmers who quickly adopted industrial methods in the 20th century, the Amish remained committed to their traditional ways. The real transformation happened in the 1950s and 1960s when commercial tobacco companies began flooding the market with chemically treated products. While most American farmers were seduced by promises of higher yields through pesticides and fertilizers, the Amish held firm to their principles. Their religious beliefs, which emphasized stewardship of the land and rejection of worldly conveniences, meant they continued hand planting, hand cultivating, and hand harvesting every tobacco leaf. This wasn't just about religion, it was about philosophy. The Amish believe that working the land with their hands keeps them connected to God's creation. They see farming as a sacred calling, not just a business. Every tobacco plant represents hours of manual labor, prayer, and careful attention. There are no tractors running on gasoline, no chemical sprayers, no automated harvesters, just families working together under the sun, using horse-drawn equipment and tools that haven't changed in design for over 100 years. What's fascinating is how this ancient approach has suddenly become incredibly valuable in modern times. As consumers grow more health-conscious and skeptical of industrial agriculture, the Amish commitment to purity has transformed from a religious practice into a massive market advantage. The very methods that once seemed backward are now seen as premium, authentic, and desirable. Buyers aren't just purchasing tobacco, they're buying into a philosophy, a lifestyle, and a guarantee of purity that simply cannot be found in mass-produced alternatives. This historical foundation set the stage for everything that would follow. What makes Amish tobacco different? When you compare Amish tobacco to commercial tobacco, you're essentially comparing handcrafted art to factory production. The differences are so profound that many buyers claim they can taste, smell, and feel the distinction immediately. But what exactly makes Amish tobacco so unique? The answer lies in every single step of the process. First and foremost is the complete absence of chemicals. While commercial tobacco farms spray their crops with dozens of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and chemical fertilizers, Amish farmers use absolutely none of these. Their fields are pure. The soil is enriched only with natural compost and animal manure from their own livestock. This means every tobacco leaf grows in living, healthy soil that hasn't been contaminated with synthetic substances. When you smoke or chew Amish tobacco, you're experiencing the plant in its most natural state. The growing method itself is radically different. Commercial farmers plant tobacco in massive monoculture fields, sometimes covering hundreds of acres with nothing but tobacco. This depletes the soil and requires heavy chemical intervention to keep plants healthy. Amish farmers, in contrast, practiced crop rotation and companion planting. They might grow tobacco one year, then rotate to corn or hay the next, allowing the soil to regenerate naturally. This sustainable approach produces stronger, more flavorful tobacco plants. Hand cultivation makes another enormous difference. Every Amish tobacco plant is individually tended. Farmers walk their fields daily, inspecting each plant for pests or disease. If they find a problem, they handle it manually, picking off insects by hand or removing affected leaves. This level of individual attention is impossible on industrial farms, where machines do most of the work. The result is that only the healthiest, most vibrant leaves make it to harvest. The tobacco varieties themselves are often different too. Many Amish farmers grow heirloom tobacco varieties that have been preserved within their communities for generations. These aren't the genetically modified or selectively bred commercial varieties designed for maximum nicotine content and fast growth. Instead, they're traditional cultivars valued for flavor, aroma, and overall quality. Some of these seed lines have been kept pure for over a century. Finally, there's the intangible element of care and intention. Amish farmers aren't trying to maximize profits or meet corporate quotas. They're growing tobacco as an extension of their faith and lifestyle. This means they're never rushed, never cutting corners, and never compromising quality for speed or convenience. The growing process, the journey of Amish tobacco from seed to harvest, is a masterclass in patience and traditional agricultural wisdom. Unlike modern farms where planting happens with GPS-guided machinery and predetermined schedules, Amish tobacco cultivation follows the rhythms of nature and generations of accumulated knowledge passed down from father to son, mother to daughter. Everything begins in early spring with seed selection. Amish farmers don't order seeds from catalogs or agricultural suppliers. Instead, they save seeds from their best plants each year, selecting for flavor, leaf size, disease resistance, and overall quality. This practice of seed saving has resulted in unique tobacco varieties that exist nowhere else. Some families have been cultivating the same genetic line for 5 or 6 generations, creating tobaccos that are essentially heirlooms, irreplaceable and distinctive. The seeds are tiny, almost like dust, and must be started indoors or in protected seedbeds. Amish families carefully prepare special soil mixtures, often using recipes that have been refined over decades. The seedlings are monitored daily, watered by hand, and protected from temperature fluctuations. This early care is crucial because strong seedlings produce superior tobacco plants later. Children often help with this stage, learning the family trade from the youngest ages. When the weather warms sufficiently, usually late May or early June depending on the region, transplanting begins. This is backbreaking work done entirely by hand. The family walks the fields with baskets of seedlings, carefully placing each one in prepared holes. The spacing must be precise. Too close and plants compete for nutrients. Too far and you waste valuable land. Amish farmers measure this by eye and experience, achieving consistency that would impress any agricultural engineer. Throughout the summer growing season, the real work intensifies. Weeding is constant and done by hand or with horse-drawn cultivators. There are no herbicides to kill unwanted plants, so the family must physically remove every weed that threatens their tobacco. In the intense summer heat, this means hours of bent-over labor in the fields. But this manual weeding also aerates the soil and allows farmers to inspect every plant regularly. Topping is another critical step. When tobacco plants begin to flower, those flower heads must be removed by hand to direct the plant's energy into leaf production rather than seed production. Again, this is done plant by plant, with farmers walking the rows and carefully snapping off each flower head. Similarly, suckers' small shoots that grow from leaf axils must be removed regularly to ensure maximum leaf quality. Throughout this entire process, no irrigation systems are used. The tobacco relies on natural rainfall and the moisture retention capabilities of healthy organic soil, curing and processing methods. After months of careful cultivation, harvest time arrives, but the work is far from over. In fact, Some argue that curing and processing are where Amish tobacco truly becomes exceptional. This is where tradition, patience, and craftsmanship transform raw leaves into a premium product that buyers travel across state lines to obtain. Harvesting itself is an art form. Unlike commercial operations that use machines to cut entire plants at once, Amish farmers practice priming the selective harvesting of leaves as they reach peak ripeness. Starting from the bottom of the plant and working upward over several weeks, farmers handpick only the leaves that have reached perfect maturity. This might mean going through the same field 5 or 6 times, but it ensures that every leaf is harvested at its absolute best. The physical skill required is remarkable. Experienced farmers can judge ripeness by color, texture, and even the way a leaf sounds when touched. Once harvested, leaves are carefully loaded onto horse-drawn wagons and taken to curing barns. These aren't modern climate-controlled facilities, but traditional wooden structures that have been used for generations. The barns are specifically designed with slatted sides that allow air circulation while protecting tobacco from direct sunlight and rain. Many of these barns are over 100 years old. Built by ancestors and maintained with the same care as any family heirloom, the curing process itself relies on air curing, the most traditional and time-consuming method available. Fresh tobacco leaves are tied in small bundles called hands and hung from poles in the barn's upper levels. This tying is skilled work, usually done by the entire family working together. The leaves must be secure enough not to fall, but loose enough to allow air circulation around each leaf. Then comes the waiting. For 6 to 8 weeks, the tobacco hangs in those barns while nature does its work. As air slowly circulates through the barn, chlorophyll breaks down, sugars develop, and the leaves gradually change from green to rich golden brown or deep mahogany, depending on the variety. Temperature and humidity fluctuations cause the leaves to sweat, releasing moisture slowly and evenly. Amish farmers monitor this process constantly, opening or closing barn doors to control airflow, ensuring the cure proceeds perfectly. This patient, natural curing develops complex flavors and aromas that quick-cured commercial tobacco simply cannot match. There are no artificial heat sources, no fans forcing air movement, no chemical treatments to speed the process. Just tobacco, airtime, and the accumulated wisdom of generations who've learned to read the subtle signs that indicate perfect curing. Why buyers travel so far? The phenomenon of buyers traveling from 20 different states to purchase Amish tobacco isn't just about getting a product. It's about accessing something that has become increasingly rare and modern. America, authenticity, purity, and genuine quality. Understanding why people make these journeys reveals deeper truths about consumer values and the failures of industrial agriculture. The most obvious reason is health consciousness. While no tobacco is truly healthy, many buyers believe that Amish tobacco is significantly less harmful than commercial alternatives. Without pesticides, chemical fertilizers, or the hundreds of additives that commercial tobacco companies use, Amish tobacco contains only the plant itself. For people who choose to use tobacco, this represents the cleanest option available. Many buyers report fewer respiratory problems, less harsh smoke, and an overall cleaner experience compared to store-bought products. Price is another powerful motivator. This might seem counterintuitive. Wouldn't hand-grown chemical-free tobacco cost more? Actually, because Amish farmers sell directly to consumers and don't pay for advertising, fancy packaging, or corporate overhead, their prices are often significantly lower than retail tobacco products. A buyer might pay 1/3 to 1/2 the price of commercial tobacco for a superior product. When you factor in buying in bulk, the savings become substantial enough to justify a long drive. But there's also something deeper happening here. Many buyers talk about the experience of purchasing from Amish farmers as something meaningful in itself. In a world dominated by impersonal online transactions and corporate retailers, there's something profoundly satisfying about driving to a farm, meeting the family who grew your tobacco, seeing the fields and barns with your own eyes, and conducting business with a handshake. This human connection has become precious and rare. Trust plays an enormous role too. Amish communities have reputations for honesty and integrity that span centuries. When an Amish farmer tells you his tobacco is chemical-free, you believe him. There's no marketing spin, no misleading labels, no corporate double. The Amish don't advertise, and they don't exaggerate. Their word is their bond, And that level of trustworthiness has become incredibly valuable in an era of widespread consumer skepticism. The quality itself creates loyal customers who become advocates. Someone might initially travel to an Amish farm out of curiosity or to save money, but they return year after year because the tobacco is genuinely superior. The flavor is richer, more complex. The aroma is cleaner and more natural. The leaves are intact and properly cured rather than the chopped, processed material found in commercial products. Once someone experiences this difference firsthand, they rarely go back to commercial alternatives. The 20-state buyer network. The geographic spread of Amish tobacco buyers is truly remarkable. People don't just come from neighboring counties or adjacent states, they travel from Florida to Maine, from Texas to Michigan, creating a network that spans virtually the entire eastern United States and beyond. Understanding how this network formed and operates reveals fascinating insights about information flow, community building, and consumer behavior in the modern age. The network didn't emerge overnight. It started small, growing organically through word of mouth over decades. An Amish farmer might sell to a few local customers. One of those customers mentions it to a friend 2 states away. That friend visits, has a positive experience, and tells others. Gradually, quietly, without any advertising or marketing campaigns, the customer base expanded geographically. This organic growth meant that by the time the network reached its current size, it was built on genuine relationships and proven quality rather than hype or promotional tactics. Interestingly, the Amish themselves do absolutely nothing to promote this expansion. They don't have websites, social media accounts, or advertising budgets. They don't attend trade shows or send out catalogs. In fact, many Amish farmers are somewhat bemused by the distances people travel to reach them. From their perspective, they're simply farming the way their grandparents did. The fact that this has become valuable to distant customers is almost accidental. So how do new buyers find Amish tobacco sources? The primary method remains personal referral. Someone who's already made the trip shares information with trusted friends or family members. These referrals carry enormous weight because they're based on personal experience rather than marketing claims. When your brother-in-law drives 6 hours to buy tobacco and comes back raving about the quality and price, you pay attention. Traditional communication methods also play a role. Some Amish communities maintain phone shanties, shared telephones in small buildings located at the edges of properties. Buyers can call to inquire about availability, prices, and visiting hours. These conversations are brief and businesslike, but they serve the essential function of connecting buyers with sellers across vast distances. Certain regions have become particularly well known as Amish tobacco centers. Lancaster County in Pennsylvania, Holmes County in Ohio, and parts of Indiana have concentrations of tobacco-growing Amish families. Buyers from distant states often plan trips to these regions, visiting multiple farms in a single journey to stock up. Some buyers form informal buying cooperatives, where several people from the same distant city pool resources share driving responsibilities and make bulk purchases together to maximize the efficiency of their trips. The network has also developed its own informal protocols and etiquette. Experienced buyers know to call ahead, respect farm schedules, bring exact cash, and be prepared to load their own purchases. Legal and regulatory aspects. The legal landscape surrounding Amish tobacco sales is far more complex than most people realize. While buying and selling tobacco is legal in the United States, the regulatory framework involves federal, state, and local laws that create a maze of compliance requirements. What makes the Amish situation particularly interesting is how these traditional farmers navigate modern regulations while maintaining their separation from mainstream society and their commitment to simplicity. At the federal level, tobacco is regulated primarily by the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, commonly known as the TTB. This agency requires anyone selling tobacco to obtain proper permits and pay applicable taxes. The regulations were designed with large commercial operations in mind, but they apply equally to small family farms. Amish tobacco farmers must register their operations, maintain records, and remit taxes just like any corporate tobacco company. The challenge is that these requirements often involve paperwork, computer systems, and bureaucratic processes that conflict with Amish values of simplicity and separation from worldly systems. Many Amish farmers have found creative solutions to meet these requirements while staying true to their beliefs. Some hire outside accountants or lawyers who handle the regulatory paperwork on their behalf. Others work through Amish business committees within their communities, where one or two individuals who are comfortable with such matters handle compliance for multiple farmers. These arrangements allow the farmers to remain legally compliant without personally engaging with systems they find objectionable. State regulations add another layer of complexity. Each state has its own tobacco laws, and they vary dramatically. Some states have minimal restrictions on direct farm sales, treating tobacco like any other agricultural product. Others impose strict licensing requirements, age verification procedures, and sales limitations for Amish farmers selling to buyers from 20 different states. This creates a patchwork of rules that can be difficult to navigate. The farmers themselves typically don't track which states have which requirements. That responsibility falls on the buyers. Interstate commerce laws also come into play. When someone from Florida drives to Pennsylvania to buy tobacco, that transaction crosses state lines, potentially triggering federal commerce regulations. However, because the buyer is physically present at the farm and transporting the tobacco themselves, rather than having it shipped, most of these transactions fall into a legal gray area that tends to favor the buyer and seller. Still, buyers need to be aware that some states prohibit bringing in tobacco purchased out of state or impose quantity limits on such imports. Taxation represents perhaps the biggest regulatory challenge. Different states tax tobacco at vastly different rates, and some impose taxes based on where the tobacco is consumed rather than where it's purchased. An Amish farmer selling to a local customer has a straightforward tax obligation. But what about a customer from a high-tax state buying in a low-tax state? Technically, that buyer might owe use taxes in their home state, though enforcement of such laws is practically non-existent for individual consumers. Economic impact. The economic ripple effects of Amish tobacco farming extend far beyond the individual farm families involved. This industry has become a crucial economic lifeline for entire communities, supporting not just farmers but also suppliers, neighboring businesses, and local economies in ways that are both direct and subtle for the Amish families themselves. Tobacco represents a critical cash crop that enables their traditional lifestyle to continue. Unlike subsistence farming, where everything grown is consumed by the family, tobacco provides actual income that can be used to purchase land, build homes, buy tools and equipment, and support the community's various needs. A successful tobacco farm might generate $30,000 to $60,000 in annual income for a family, not a fortune by modern standards, but substantial for people who live simply and have minimal expenses. This income is particularly important because it allows young Amish families to stay in farming, rather than being forced into factory work or other non-agricultural employment. As farmland becomes increasingly expensive and scarce, high-value crops like tobacco make it possible to earn a living from smaller acreages. A family might sustain themselves on 20 or 30 acres of tobacco, whereas they might need hundreds of acres of corn or hay to generate equivalent income. This economic viability helps preserve the Amish agricultural tradition for future generations. The economic impact radiates outward through the supply chain. Amish tobacco farmers purchase seeds, though often from other Amish seed savers. They buy basic farm supplies, tools, and equipment from local businesses. While they don't use tractors or modern machinery, they do need hand tools, barn materials, tobacco lath for hanging leaves, and countless other items. Much of this purchasing happens within the Amish community itself, creating an internal economy that strengthens community bonds and keeps money circulating locally. Local non-Amish businesses benefit significantly too. The influx of buyers from 20 different states creates secondary economic activity in surrounding areas. These travelers need gas stations, restaurants, hotels, and other services. Many buyers make multi-day trips, visiting several farms and spending money in the local economy while they're there. Small towns near major Amish tobacco growing regions see noticeable business increases during harvest and selling season. Gas stations report increased fuel sales, diners see more customers, and local shops benefit from the traffic. There's also a property value effect. Areas with thriving Amish communities tend to maintain higher farmland values because the Amish are committed to keeping land in agricultural use rather than selling to developers. Their presence creates a buffer against suburban sprawl and helps preserve the rural character of regions. This benefits all landowners in the area, not just the Amish themselves. The tax revenue generated by Amish tobacco operations, while perhaps not enormous in absolute terms, provides meaningful support for local governments. Property taxes on Amish farms, business taxes on their tobacco sales, and the economic activity generated by visiting buyers all contribute to county and township budgets. The buying experience. Walking onto an Amish farm to purchase tobacco is an experience that stands in stark contrast to virtually every other commercial transaction in modern American life. There are no storefronts, no shopping carts, no credit card terminals, no return policies posted on walls. Instead, there's a profoundly personal interaction rooted in mutual respect, tradition, and straightforward honesty that many buyers find almost therapeutic in its simplicity. Most buying experiences begin with a phone call to the farm's shared phone shanty or an appointment made through word-of-mouth connections. The Amish farmer will specify acceptable visiting times, which always respect their religious obligations and family schedules. Sundays are completely off-limits, as this is their day of worship and rest. Harvest seasons require flexibility because farming work takes precedence over sales. Buyers learn quickly to be patient and accommodating. This isn't a retail store with set hours, but a working farm with natural rhythms. Upon arrival, visitors are typically greeted by the farmer himself, often accompanied by family members. The greeting is warm, but reserved. The Amish are friendly people, but not effusive or overly familiar with strangers. A firm handshake and direct eye contact communicate respect. Small talk is minimal and purposeful, usually focused on the journey the buyer made, weather conditions, or the current tobacco crop's quality. The tobacco itself is usually stored in barns or outbuildings, specifically designated for this purpose. The farmer will lead buyers to see the product, explaining what varieties are available, how each was grown and cured, and what characteristics distinguish one from another. This isn't a sales pitch. There's no exaggeration or marketing language. The Amish farmer simply describes what he has, truthfully and matter. If a particular batch didn't cure as well as he'd hoped, he'll say so. If another batch is exceptionally good, he'll mention that too, but without fanfare. Buyers are often allowed, even encouraged, to inspect the tobacco themselves. You can touch the leaves, smell them, examine their color and texture. This hands-on evaluation is completely normal and expected. The farmer wants you to be satisfied with your purchase because his reputation depends on customer satisfaction and word-of-mouth referrals. There's no buyer's remorse or return policy, so everyone benefits from thorough inspection before the sale. Pricing is straightforward and non-negotiable. The farmer states his price, which is typically by the pound. There's no bargaining or haggling. The Amish consider their word binding, and the price quoted is the price charged. However, the prices are already fair and significantly below retail, so buyers rarely feel any need to negotiate. Many farmers offer slight discounts for very large quantity purchases, but this is mentioned up front if applicable. Payment is always in cash. The Amish don't accept checks, credit cards, or digital payments. This isn't about tax avoidance. They properly report and pay taxes on their sales, but rather about their commitment to simplicity. And avoiding entanglement with banking systems and modern financial infrastructure, buyers need to come prepared with exact cash for their intended purchase. Challenges faced. Despite the apparent success and growing demand for Amish tobacco, these farmers face an array of challenges that threaten the sustainability and future of their operations. Understanding these obstacles provides important context for why supporting small-scale traditional agriculture matters and what forces work against it. Competition from industrial tobacco companies represents an ongoing challenge, though perhaps not in the way you might expect. The major tobacco corporations aren't competing directly for the same customers. People who seek out Amish tobacco are fundamentally different consumers than those buying mass-market cigarettes. Instead, the competition manifests through market saturation and price manipulation. Large companies can flood markets with cheap tobacco products, making it harder for small farmers to maintain pricing that covers their labor-intensive production methods. While remaining competitive, regulatory burdens hit small farmers disproportionately hard. While a corporation can afford teams of lawyers and compliance officers to navigate complex tobacco regulations, an Amish farmer must either learn these systems himself or pay outside help. Every new regulation, every additional form, every compliance requirement creates friction that large companies barely notice but that can be genuinely burdensome for someone farming 30 acres with hand tools and horse-drawn equipment. The irony is that regulations ostensibly designed to protect public health often make it harder for the cleanest, most natural tobacco to reach consumers. Weather and climate variability pose existential risks. Unlike industrial farms with irrigation systems, crop insurance, and diversified operations across multiple states, an Amish tobacco farmer's entire year can be destroyed by a single severe drought, unexpected frost, or violent storm. Their faith prohibits most forms of insurance, meaning there's no financial safety net when disaster strikes. A hailstorm that shreds tobacco leaves represents not just lost income, but potentially catastrophic financial hardship for a family. Climate change is making weather patterns increasingly unpredictable, amplifying these risks year after year. Labor availability within Amish communities is becoming problematic in some regions. Tobacco farming is extraordinarily labor-intensive, traditionally relying on large families working together. However, Amish family sizes have been gradually decreasing in some communities, and young people are increasingly drawn to other occupations. Carpentry, construction, and small manufacturing businesses often provide steadier income with less physical hardship than tobacco farming. As older generation farmers retire, finding younger people willing to take over tobacco operations becomes increasingly difficult. Land prices and availability create perhaps the most fundamental, long-term challenge. As suburban sprawl continues and farmland becomes more valuable for development, the cost of agricultural land has skyrocketed in many traditional Amish areas. Young families who want to start tobacco farming often cannot afford to purchase adequate land, even with help from their communities. This forces some Amish families to migrate to more affordable regions, fragmenting communities and disrupting the knowledge transfer that happens when multiple generations farm near each other. Public health campaigns against tobacco use also create challenges, though the Amish themselves are somewhat insulated from these messages due to their limited engagement with mainstream media. Quality control. In an industry without certification agencies, third-party inspectors, or formal quality standards, how do Amish tobacco farmers maintain the exceptional consistency and quality that keeps buyers returning year after year? The answer lies in a complex system of community accountability, personal integrity, and practical wisdom that has evolved over generations. Reputation serves as the primary quality control mechanism in Amish tobacco farming. Within the close-knit Amish community, word travels fast. A farmer who sells inferior tobacco, whether through negligence or intentional deception, will find his reputation damaged not just among English customers, but more importantly, within his own community. The social consequences of being known as someone who compromises quality are severe in a culture where community standing and mutual respect form the foundation of daily life. This creates powerful incentive to maintain the highest standards possible. The process begins with seed selection and continues through every stage of cultivation. Amish farmers save seeds only from their very best plants, those showing superior growth, disease resistance, and curing quality. This constant selection pressure over many generations has resulted in tobacco varieties that are inherently poor. Plants are never allowed to reproduce, ensuring genetic improvement over time rather than degradation. This stands in stark contrast to commercial farming, where seed genetics are controlled by corporations, and farmers purchase new seed each year rather than selecting from their own crops. Natural pest management, while initially appearing to be a quality challenge, actually becomes a quality advantage through forcing farmers to maintain exceptionally healthy plants without chemical pesticides to fall back on. Amish farmers must create growing conditions where plants are vigorous enough to resist pests and diseases naturally. This means perfect soil health, proper spacing, adequate nutrition, and constant vigilance. The result is that only the strongest, healthiest tobacco makes it to harvest. Natural selection operating at the field level. The curing process receives obsessive attention because farmers understand this is where quality can be won or lost. A perfectly grown tobacco leaf can be ruined by improper curing, while even mediocre leaves can be improved through skillful curing management. Amish farmers check their curing barns daily, sometimes multiple times per day, monitoring temperature, humidity, and airflow. They learn to read subtle color changes, to feel when leaves have reached the right moisture content, to smell when fermentation is proceeding correctly. This knowledge cannot be written in manuals or taught in classrooms. It must be learned through years of hands-on experience and careful mentoring. Future of Amish tobacco. Looking toward the future of Amish tobacco farming reveals a landscape filled with both promising opportunities and serious uncertainties. The trajectory this industry takes in coming decades will be shaped by demographic shifts, regulatory changes, market dynamics, and the choices made by the next generation of potential farmers. The demand side appears robust and potentially growing. As consumers become increasingly health-conscious and skeptical of industrial agriculture, interest in pure chemical-free products continues rising. The organic and natural products market has exploded across all agricultural sectors, and tobacco is no exception. Younger consumers especially show preference for products they perceive as authentic, sustainable, and transparent, all qualities that Amish tobacco embodies perfectly. This suggests that market demand will remain strong or even increase in coming years, providing economic incentive for continued production. However, supply faces more complicated prospects. The number of Amish families engaged in tobacco farming has actually decreased in some regions over the past 2 decades. This isn't because farming has become unprofitable, but because alternative occupations have emerged that many young Amish find more attractive. Small-scale manufacturing, furniture making, construction businesses, and retail shops often provide comparable or better income with less physical hardship and more predictable cash flow than farming. The grueling manual labor that tobacco farming requires is becoming harder to sustain as other options become available. Generational knowledge transfer presents another critical factor. The deep expertise required for successful tobacco cultivation, understanding soil health, reading weather patterns, mastering curing techniques, selecting superior seed genetics takes decades to develop. This knowledge exists primarily in the minds and hands of older farmers who learned from their fathers and grandfathers. If younger generation Amish choose not to pursue tobacco farming, this accumulated wisdom could be lost surprisingly quickly. Unlike book learning, agricultural expertise is best transmitted through years of working alongside experienced practitioners, and that transmission chain is vulnerable. Regulatory environments will significantly influence the industry's future. Governments at all levels continue debating tobacco policies, with some jurisdictions moving toward more restrictive regulations, while others maintain relatively permissive approaches. If regulatory burdens increase substantially, small-scale Amish operations might find compliance costs prohibitive, potentially forcing them out of the market despite strong demand. Conversely, if regulations increasingly favor organic and chemical-free agriculture, Amish farmers could find themselves with formal certification advantages that boost their market position. Climate change introduces unpredictable variables that could reshape where and how tobacco is grown. Traditional tobacco-growing regions might become too hot, too dry, or too wet for reliable production. Amish farmers, lacking irrigation infrastructure and crop insurance, are particularly vulnerable to climate disruption. Some communities might need to abandon tobacco entirely, while others in previously marginal areas might find their climates becoming more suitable. This geographic shift could fragment the industry and disrupt the buyer networks that have developed over generations. So there you have it, the complete story of why buyers travel from 20 states for Amish tobacco. From centuries-old farming traditions to chemical-free cultivation. From hand-curing processes to the powerful buyer networks that span across America, we've covered it all. This isn't just about tobacco, it's about preserving authenticity in a modern world. If you found this video valuable, smash that like button and subscribe to Amish Forge for more fascinating insights into traditional Amish practices. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever bought Amish tobacco? Share your experience. See you in the next video.